Who Moved My Cheese? An Amazing Way to Deal with Change in Your Work and in Your Life, by Dr. Spencer Johnson, is a great book. Its format is unusual. It is a short story within a short story. Johnson, who was an American physician and a lecturer at the Harvard Business School, resorts to an ancient Greek technique of storytelling, parable, and explains its meaning in the other dimension of the book, also fictional but written as a typical narrative. The plot is very simple. A group of classmates gather after their school reunion, telling each other about their lives and career. One of them, Michael, mentions a parable that helped him improve both his work and life. This parable is called Who Moved My Cheese, and it's about change. Michael retells it, and the next day they gather again, having analyzed their own experience through the lenses of the parable's wisdom, and to share their conclusions. Below we've summarized both the parable and the classmates' discussion part. Who Moved My Cheese? The story. There are 4 main characters in the story, 2 mice and 2 little people. Every day, they run through a maze looking for cheese. For the mice, cheese is just food, and trying to find it, they are directed by their simple instincts. For the little people, however, cheese, with a capital C, means something different. It's a metaphor for anything that can be desired. Little people have complex brains, and they live by emotions and thoughts. The 4 characters have speaking names that reflect the way they act in the story. The mice are called Sniff, because he sniffs the change, and Scurry, because he scurries into action. The little people are Hem and Haw, from the idiom, to hem and haw, which means, to hesitate. The mice and the little people look for cheese in labyrinths of corridors, and one day, they all find it, in section C. They're happy, and every morning, they go back there to enjoy the cheese. The mice remain cautious though. They tie their running shoes and hang them around their necks in case they're needed again. Before running to section C, they still inspect the area to see if there is any sign of a possible change. Unlike them, Hem and Haw get relaxed and put their running gear away. They think they're entitled to have the cheese, for the only reason it took them so much effort to find it. But one day, the cheese disappears. Sniff the Scurry don't overanalyze the situation. They simply put on their shoes and start running again, in search of new cheese. After some unsuccessful attempts, they find it in section N, seeing a pile of fresh cheese, many sorts of which are not even known to them. But what about Hem and Haw? Oh, they're frustrated. They can't believe someone just dared move their cheese. Haw covers his ears and closes his eyes, blocking the truth out. Hem feels betrayed. Hungry and shocked, they come back home. But before they go, Haw writes something on a wall. The more important your cheese is to you, the more you want to hold on to it. What happens to them next can be called a phase of denial. Hem and Haw keep coming to section C every day, hoping that someone, no one even knows who, will bring the cheese back. But day after day, nothing changes. Haw starts to talk Hem into searching for new cheese, but Hem is incredibly stubborn. Why would he go? He's comfortable here. He's getting too old. He's scared to get lost. It's dangerous out there. They both stay, and disappointment grows. Passively waiting for a miracle, they get depressed and can't sleep at night. They think, maybe someone hid the cheese behind the wall? So they make a hole in the wall, and see no cheese. After a while, Haw starts to accept the change, realizing he needs to adapt to it. He writes down a thought on a wall: if you do not change, you can become extinct. Haw imagines himself finding and enjoying the cheese, and this thought gives him inspiration and strength. He knows the maze means uncertainty, but now he understands this uncertainty is temporary. He's scared, but writes down another sentence on the wall: what would I do if I weren't afraid? Haw thinks about fear. He makes the conclusion that even though fear can paralyze you, it can also prompt you into action. Finally, he decides to start looking for new cheese, by himself because Hem chooses to stay. The maze is confusing. One moment Haw thinks he's close, the next one he understands it was an illusion. At least he feels he's taking control, not just being a passive observer. Running through the corridors, an interesting thought occurs to him: the cheese didn't just disappear overnight. The amount of it was getting smaller, and it didn't taste as good anymore. They just didn't pay attention. So he writes another reminder on the wall. Smell the cheese often so you know when it is getting old. The dark passages are scary, and it makes Hall want to come back to section C. If Hem is there, Hall won't be alone. But he changes his mind, and writes one more thought: movement in a new direction helps you find new cheese. He's still very scared, actually, scaring himself to death, as his own imagination conjures up images of things that could happen to him in the dangerous maze. All of a sudden, he realizes these demons are imaginary, and laughs at himself. He starts feeling good. When you stop being afraid, you feel good. Ho replaces images of danger with images of new cheese, seeing himself sitting on a pile of cheddar, brie, and many other kinds. He sees it in detail until this picture doesn't seem unrealistic. He writes the following: imagining yourself enjoying your new cheese leads you to it. Then he starts thinking about opportunities the change is present. Maybe instead of what they lost, they can get something that's even better. Why is change always perceived as something bad? This thought inspires Ha, and he runs faster. And he does find a cheese station. The only problem is, someone has already been here, and all that is left are just small pieces of cheese, delicious, but not many. He understands he lost a chance. Taking some cheese for Hem, he writes: the quicker you let go of old cheese, the sooner you find new cheese. Ho realizes that his old thinking prevented him from finding new cheese. He was more concerned with what could go wrong than with what could go right. He didn't think about new cheese. He worried about keeping the old cheese. But after he sees that going into the maze again wasn't as bad, after all, he was able to find enough cheese to keep him running, he changes his beliefs. He believed that change would harm him. Now he believes it can help him. And he finds the cheese. It's in the cheese section N, where Sniff and Scurry are. He tries the new cheese and takes his shoes off, but doesn't hide them. Instead, he ties them and hangs them around his neck. Ho reflects on his experience and writes a summary of what he learned.